evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the National Press Club. I'm Sonia Hilgren. I'm president of the National Press Club. Dee Myers, one of our panelists this evening, said unequivocally in the Washington Post, quoted today, "There is no humor in Washington." Tonight, we may or may not prove her wrong. That is for you to judge. And I want to tell you how pleased we are to present this program in collaboration with Comedy Central. And I'm going to turn it over to Tony Fox of Comedy Central, who's going to introduce the rest of the show. And thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Sonia. I, too, would like to welcome you here this evening on behalf of Comedy Central. We are very excited about this panel. I would like to start by introducing our moderator, a veteran CBS newsman, Mr. Morley Safer, and co-editor of 60 Minutes. Okay. Next to him is the former White House press secretary for President Clinton and current co-host of the CNBC program Equal Time, Ms. Dee Myers. Next to Dee is humorist and author of the nonfiction bestseller Rush Limbaugh is a Big Fat Idiot and Other Observations, Mr. Al Franken. Next to Al is the press secretary for Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, Mr. Tony Blankley. Next to Tony is the star of the hit Comedy Central series Politically Incorrect and anchor of our Indecision 96 presidential campaign coverage, Mr. Bill Maher. And lastly is longtime GOP strategist and partner in the international strategic consulting firm of Davis, Manafort, Stone, Inc., Mr. Roger Stone. All yours, Morley.
Thank you. What Somerset Maugham said of the literary life can certainly be applied to politics this year. He said, "Make people laugh and they think you're a trivial fellow. But bore them in the right way, and your reputation is assured." And I think we can properly describe Mr. Clinton and Mr. Dole as properly boring. Neither is certainly very funny, at least not on purpose. And I'd like to ask the panel, particularly Bill and Al, it looks like a pretty dry time ahead, does it not? Have we not heard every joke we can possibly hear about Clinton and Dole?
Al, I defer out of age.
Well, okay. First of all, you got a lot to work with Clinton and Dole. Let me just review. Dole's old. He's extremely old.
Why is that? Why is that funny? Why is that funny?
Oh, you can do all kinds of jokes.
You know how old he is, Al?
He's 72 years old.
When he won California, he declared it for Spain. Just saying that's old.
That is old.
I'm saying.
So you got the old, you got the temper. So
The
that'll
temper
happen.
of what?
Bob Dole's temper.
Oh, I see.
Well, where have you?
But and
You're in
you
the
think
editing room doing those tobacco.
and you
pieces.
think that
Yeah, but Dole doesn't have a
Bob-
temper anymore. He hasn't. It's gone.
He's kept it under wraps.
He's old. He's too old to have a temper.
That's true. I agree.
He had a distemper show.
And then with Clinton, you have your, you know, you have the adultery thing, which you wouldn't. No one in his right mind would raise that in front of him.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
Or God forbid with his
speaking
wife.
of which, Don Imus, who some people do find funny, I guess, does the Imus flap prove once and for all that people in this town have no sense of humor?
No, I think it proves that at the dinner that night when they were serving the Italian chicken, that really they had served a little bit of British beef and the whole town came down with mad cow disease because everybody's wandering around, frothing and falling on their bottoms.
No, but I think the thing that makes me think there is no sense of humor is that why on earth would you invite Don Imus if you want gentility?
But you know, the bottom line is Don Imus wasn't very funny. He was
I
mean.
disagree. He was funny.
I didn't think he was very funny. I thought he was. Some of his stuff was funny, but in aggregate, he wasn't that funny.
You were there?
Yeah.
Were you there? I was there. Who else was there?
I was there.
You were there. The interesting thing about it was, and this is just an observation of, I don't want to get into critiquing Imus because
Why not?
Because next week he'll critique you. Right?
Yeah, because I'm doing the White House Correspondents' Dinner in a month, and
he
it's
stole
kind of a
all your...
lose-lose situation too.
Are you going to be as lewd and
well, actually, I don't have a lot of time to prepare, so I'm basically just going to do what he did.
See, they wanted Mark Russell. They wanted cheeky. They didn't want insulting. They got Don Rickles on acid.
No, but you don't get... Why would anyone invite Don Imus if they wanted Mark Russell?
What I was going to say about being there, first of all, if you were there, it was a lot worse than seeing on TV because, you know, we're animals. We're all animals, and people are giving off like these chemicals. You know? I'm like, oh my God. But what was interesting about the Washington audience was that people were shocked, but they would do this. They go like, oh my, I can't believe he's doing it. That's funny. Gosh, what a horrible. And it was just like, I don't know if it was nervous laughter or just they don't know how to be an audience in this town.
No, Bill, what do you make of it?
Well, I did this dinner last year, and I also got into deep shit because I said a bad word. All right. I guess
Brian
we're right
Lamb
about
must have
that. What I always find interesting is that this country has such a hard time holding two things that are opposite but also true in their mind at the same time. For example, O.J. Simpson did kill his wife, and there was a racist cop. Both things are true. In the same way, Don Imus, this town does not have a sense of humor, and Don Imus was funny.
You're wrong about Washington. This is a town that wants to cut taxes and spend more money on education at the same time. We understand that concept.
No, but
perfectly.
the question can fairly be asked.
First of all, O.J. Simpson was acquitted, and this is the United States of America. So I am not going to sit here while a man who was cleared by our justice system is...
Especially while he's at large, right?
Absolutely.
I don't think this town has an absence of humor, but I think it has an excess of hypocrisy. Because the humor people were laughing at, they laugh at Imus every morning driving to work, and then when he is more visible, suddenly everybody is shocked to find out that he was saying what they've been laughing at for the last few years.
But is there a line?
Yes.
Forget whether...
And I didn't cross it. What pissed me off about this thing... You laugh, and I wish to Christ you would, but I'm telling you, there is a line. What bothered me is I was interviewed by all the papers after Don Imus's thing, as well as after my own, because they gave me some crap for this. But I would not, in front of the president, make a joke about his infidelity, with his wife sitting right there. I wouldn't do that to any couple at a dinner party. And I didn't. I mean, that is where I would draw the line. And so I hate when they called me up and lumped me in with that. I think, no, there is a distinction.
But would you hold on a minute. So you say sex is the line, or...
No.
Or would you have made it... Would you have made a joke about smoking marijuana, for example, in front of the president?
I think I did. But it wasn't about him. I said Marion Barry had a plan to get drugs off the street 1 gram at a time. And I think when you're caught in a hotel room on videotape, the gloves are off for that subject. But my experience when
He is the mayor of this city. And I will not sit here.
Boy, Al, you are liberal.
Let me address to the 3 hired guns here. Are they uncomfortable being the butt of jokes, politicians, or do they really love it?
No, I think it makes most politicians a little uncomfortable. Some of it's good-natured humor. I mean, Clinton takes a lot of shots on everything from his weight and his, love of McDonald's to things that are much more touchy.
He wants the jokes about his weight. That makes him vulnerable.
Let me explain, Morley. He eats a lot.
But that makes him vulnerable. That's a great. I mean, whenever they make a joke about his weight, he's going, "Yes, thank you, that's good."
No,
it makes me vulnerable. Okay, I'm a randy kind of redneck, blubber, bubba guy.
What may work?
But let's make fun of the blubber and not the.
Well, that's definitely true. But what may work and what politicians are comfortable with are not necessarily the same thing. And I suspect Tony's had some experience with this as well. I mean, some things that make you appear like a regular guy still make a politician uncomfortable as well.
What is Gingrich not like?
He doesn't like
to be joked about.
He doesn't like jokes about Bill Clinton's infidelity. He
You must hate that.
yeah, he stands.
I know.
Tony
I know
refuses to discuss it for the rest of
I know.
The Vanity Fair article.
Is that something
I will
he
not
likes
discuss.
to joke about?
I won't discuss Clinton's infidelity again tonight.
Now, Newt doesn't like jokes about his first wife. That I know.
Well, I
Well,
wouldn't.
you do know that.
Yes, I've read that, and I also, when I did that dinner for Clinton, he was sitting next to Gingrich, and after the dinner, I said to Gingrich, "I'd like to have you on my show," and he went, "I don't think so."
I'd like to ask you something.
Because most guys like jokes about their first wives. My experience.
God knows I'm still paying for mine.
Dole,
You were
Army,
Yeah.
Graham. They love it when you chide them on the family values. They just love it.
Mr. Stone, you had to, I shouldn't say defend, you worked for perhaps the softest target this country's ever had in politics, Dan Quayle. Right?
I supported Dan Quayle, that's true.
Somebody
how
had to.
difficult was it for you and for him?
Well, we had a lot of trouble because
No kidding.
he thought, frankly, he thought Roe v. Wade were two different ways to get across the river. I mean, it was really
What are you saying? He's stupid?
I'm not saying anything.
That sounds like what a stupid guy would say.
I think he took it, frankly, pretty good-natured. But you'll notice that he passed up this race for president in 1996. So there's just so much abuse that one human being can take.
Tell me something, I don't know, Dan.
But he is stupid.
I was going to ask,
But that's the other thing. I think.
Hold on, I was going to ask the man who knows it. Was he the buffoon that these guys made?
Not in the slightest. I mean, he was, that's a spit take is what that's called, actually. It's very old. No, look, this guy was a respected United States senator, perhaps cast into the spotlight by George Bush a little earlier in his career than had been expected, but well-liked and well-respected in this town, and he was not the caricature of him that was created.
Well, you know, the thing, though, is if Pat Moynihan had been characterized as a lightweight, he'd settle it in one meet the press. Dan Quayle had a little problem, and that's he's not a heavyweight. I mean, let's just be frank about it. I mean, the man he's doing. He was too easy a target, and
that thing he said at the United Negro College Fund, where he tried to get their slogan. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Could you,
all too well.
Could you say it word for word? Because it makes me laugh every time. There's something about, you know what I'm talking about? Like
yeah.
It's a waste to terrible a mind. How true that is.
Right. Or something along those lines.
Tell me something, is it becoming more difficult to parody politicians because they've become parodies themselves? The way they pander for love and pander for votes. I mean, the very idea of possibly the next president of the United States flying around in a Chiquita banana airplane, you couldn't come up with. I mean...
Well, that would be Bob Dole. That's another thing Bob Dole does. He calls himself Bob Dole. That's something you can do with him. Bob Dole. Been working on Bob Dole ordering breakfast. Want to hear that?
Yes, please.
Bob Dole would like the scrambled eggs. Don't undercook the eggs for Bob Dole. Bob Dole doesn't like his eggs all runny. So Well, there you got something with Bob Dole.
But no, but seriously, have they gone?
Seriously?
But seriously, folks.
They do. You people support them, you three, in doing some of the most foolish things any of us have ever seen on television.
Like what?
Like, well, for example, the New Hampshire primary campaign. I mean, they were out there just being silly, chopping wood. They don't chop wood.
Dole didn't chop wood.
Dumb stuff that.
That's because if our candidates stand in one place and read position papers, you guys don't
Exactly.
cover them. But when they go
This
out
is
to
a
chop
chicken and
wood,
egg
you'll be there with the
debate.
camera, no doubt about it.
Wood.
That's a very good point.
Abe Lincoln chopped it.
What's a good point?
What he just said,
Turned out
because
okay,
you
right.
won't cover it because the media doesn't cover reading a position
They-
paper,
they-
but they cover a photo opportunity, and I have seen a politician get out of a limo and milk a cow.
You got,
And
I mean,
there's
you guys-
nothing that describes America better.
you got,
Good night.
So, yes, but if they only did position papers, we would ultimately cover position papers. They're trying.
No, you'd cover the one candidate who's out there chopping wood and getting out of the limo and milking the cow.
that's right.
I doubt it. I doubt it. I think you are.
Boy, this
giving
feels
us
like some classic age-old conflict
Yeah.
here. Go at it, you two.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Nixon who said the only thing worse in politics than being wrong is being boring. If you bore the voters with long white
Yeah.
papers and detailed positions on the issues, you guys won't come cover the
But if
candidates.
you break a few
Yeah, ask
laws...
Dick
But if you break a few laws,
Right.
then
Man, oh man, it gets exciting.
that's the nice thing about this whole Whitewater thing. We can recycle all those slogans. I saw a jail to the chief bumper sticker yesterday, and it was new.
You've been described
don't
as the,
believe
man,
any-
as the keeper of the Nixon flame.
Indeed.
Are you fairly chilly these days?
Well, there's a certain sense of deja vu, but remember, no person is above the law.
Roger's got a knack. I didn't know that. Roger's
May
Who
need it.
knew?
Hey, there's the prankster of all time, Dick Tuck. Just disappeared, didn't he? Does anyone remember the Dick Tuck?
Yes?
The Dick Tuck.
Or Donald Segretti?
Destroyed Nixon's life. He was a classic Democrat dirty trickster.
Roger? Donald Segretti?
A great man.
Tell me, do you think,
Oh, right. Yeah, I think I did.
was Watergate,
Legendary.
those, you two were probably too young, does Watergate, did that open the floodgates for a more edgy, more brutal kind of political humor in this country?
I think Watergate, Vietnam, and the Kennedy assassination changed how Americans feel about their government morally. I don't know.
Are you running for something, Mr. Franken?
No, but I mean, that's
Yeah,
what you
I
always
think
hear.
it did, Morley. I'll jump in there.
Actually, Mr.
I really do, because, you know, comics, what we look for is to find that place in politics or anywhere in life where reality is a divergence with, you know, what people are really thinking. And, you know, Nixon, you knew he was lying. It was too great a target. Even comics who never said a political thing in their life could not wait to feed from the Watergate trough. And, you know, once you take the president, every time you take the presidency down in dignity, it stays at that level until the next guy takes it lower. There was Watergate, and then there was, you know, at some point later, the president telling an MTV reporter what kind of underwear he wore.
Well,
There is a line between those two.
yes, you say you take the presidents down in dignity. Do the presidents not willingly, happily step down in dignity
Well,
themselves?
if they're Gerald Ford, they trip down. But I agree what he says. I mean, it is Clinton going on TV talking about his underwear really makes him a target. He invites it. He then invites the
You're
ridicule.
telling, he's a man who's cut our deficit in half, Roger. I mean, this is pretty desperate stuff. AmeriCorps, please. Haiti,
NAFTA?
After
Yeah.
GATT.
that big sucking sound, yeah.
Yeah.
Newt Gingrich, we all know, dished it out to be fairly funny in a brutal way. It strikes me.
Johnny?
Here in Washington Hilton, where he in his speech, he said that liberals go to therapists that are atheists, and that our therapists tell us to live with our depravity, because that's all we have.
Is that true?
Yeah.
It is true. Yeah.
I bet they were rolling in the aisles on that.
Are there any liberals here who have accepted your depravity? How about any liberals here who are traitors? Or Democrats who are traitors? That's a funny thing he calls.
They won't admit it, though.
Yeah. How about decay? A lot of decayed liberals here. I mean, this is all funny material of the speakers.
Let me finish. I was about to say, he can dish it out.
He's unintentionally
Can
funny.
he take it?
Well, of course. I mean, I think most of the top politicians can, in fact, take it. I mean, they go to the events. They can laugh at it. I mean, I don't think you can make it through a career without being able to take a tough line against you.
But also,
Clinton's been doing it. Newt's done it. I mean, and for that matter, a lot of Eisenhower took all the pummeling of his, jumbled syntax. So I think, sure, a top politician can always take it. Measure of it.
Morley, when let me say something in defense of Gingrich. He is a thinker. He really does think about stuff. Clinton too. And when you, in this town, I think, express your mind, the way your mind has been ruminating about stuff, you're shot down. You have to stick to the very boring, narrow things of life. You can't go off about giraffes and some of those other things that he said, which were actually interesting. And the future, he said we could have, remember the thing about using the retarded and the crippled in space because there was no...
No, that was Timothy O'Leary.
No, that was Newt Gingrich.
Tim O'Leary.
You know what I'm talking about. He said that in space there's no gravity, so that
It has to do with going on honeymoons in space.
And you go on your honeymoon in space by the
It's a very bad idea. There's so much pressure on a honeymoon. You don't want to add
I think you have to be
being
in
in
good
orbit.
shape to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, gravity, I find, is helpful. And the last thing you need, and they give you some idea about their welfare reform program, if he's talking about honeymoons in space. So,
You were saying that Gingrich or politicians who, at most levels, can take it, and yet you say they can take it, and yet there is a line.
Well,
beyond which you're not supposed to be able to take it.
I mean, the trick is how to, at any given moment, decide that you're not going to take it. I mean, that was a problem Bill Clinton had at the speech the other night. Do you actually get up and walk away? Chances are, if you'd got up and walked away, he'd have been condemned for having a thin skin. And yet, then people condemn him for not getting up and walking away because he doesn't have any pride and self-respect.
But there was one difference with the dinner on the radio and television correspondence, which was the president wasn't the only one being attacked. And part of the outrage in the media was that Peter Jennings was being attacked and Bernard Shaw was being attacked and all of the icons of the media were being attacked right alongside the president, which I think added to the level of discomfort. It became not just about the president.
Well,
and I think he may not have been attacked as much had he walked out.
That's when the media really got outraged,
right.
was on their own.
When it moved from
it's one thing to attack the president, but Peter Jennings, that is way beyond the pale.
But, look, you say there's this line or this sense of decorum. Given that they go on MTV and talk about their underwear, haven't they, and given that
wasn't a prepared...
politics has become a fairly, dare I say, tasteless occupation.
They leave themselves...
Why do they deserve, hold on, why do they deserve a line? You know, anything goes. And they love to be folksy, they love to be one of us, they love to be identified with
No,
the
no, they
people.
don't love it. We love that they do it. They don't want to do it. Do you think Bob Dole wants to go and do this stupid crap that he has to go around doing?
You know what?
And every day he's going, you know what? I've served my country for 40 years. I know how to run this country and how to run the Senate. I've gotten this passed. I've done this. Why should I have to go out and milk a cow?
I think they feed off.
He doesn't want to do it. We make him do it,
I
or else
think
they won't vote for
I
him.
think they feed off that.
No, they don't. Not him.
I think you're actually rather
Clinton
hostile
does,
to
not
politicians. I think politicians reflect the society. And the fact that the line has been moved in society, and reporters accept certain statements, and politicians end up mirroring the society that they represent. So and it's very hard to abstract yourself out of the society and the standards of what's acceptable and not, whether you're a politician or a journalist. And of course you see that in journalism.
I think they reflect the society in this town. I don't think they reflect the society in this country, do you? Really?
I think in terms of changing more, certainly they do. 20 years ago, no 21-year-old would have asked the president what he was wearing under his trousers. It wouldn't have happened.
Well,
I mean, Al, you were on Saturday Night Live in the 20 years ago, and I mean, what?
It's been that long.
He's an American icon.
His show was really good then, Al.
Sorry. But has it changed in terms of what's acceptable and what you're able to say? What you were able to say in 1978 on NBC and what you're able to do now?
Satire. I don't know. Yes, it's changed. I haven't been listening. I'm
because
sorry.
of Vietnam and Watergate, right? Al?
Yes. I guess so. I'm not with the show anymore, so I'm not sure what we can do this year, what they can do this year. But yeah, I think we have. That's why we have the V chip. Because it's changed.
Does appearing on talk shows on Letterman and Leno and the others, does that help? Really?
Well, it does allow you to reach a bunch of people who never watch the news. I mean, that's the simple challenge is that only about 26 million people watch 3 network newses each night, and there are going to be 100 million voters. And the challenge for a politician is to reach beyond the people who watch the news regularly to the rest who are voting, which is why you go on MTV, if you go on Leno or Letterman.
If only there was a show that dealt with the news but was funny too.
Someday.
I can't think of one.
And the 30 million people watch.
I think
30 million people don't watch Leno and Letterman.
I think the politicians leave themselves open for this.
Unless you get him a guest shot on Friends.
Or Murphy Brownback.
But the handlers put them on these shows because it's a handler's job to put them on shows, correct?
It's a handler's job to reach audiences that you might not otherwise reach, which was a very intent. We did that with great intention in '92. That's why Bill Clinton went on Arsenio Hall. It's why he did MTV the first time, and it was very effective during the campaign. He reached out to all kinds of audiences that he hadn't previously been able to reach, and he paid a very high price for it when he got to Washington.
Well,
Because the established Washington press corps didn't like what they saw as the Clinton administration trying to go around the Washington press. But I think that this campaign and the campaigns in the future will reevaluate that a little bit exactly for the reasons that you raised. And people say, oh, well, Bill Clinton went on Don Imus in 1992. And Don Imus helped Bill Clinton win the New York primary, and there's some truth to that. And he helped Don Imus become a national, not just a New York celebrity, and he helped this show become syndicated. And then the monster that he created came back and did him.
I have a problem with this idea that the monster he created. Clinton goes on Arsenio Hall and plays the saxophone. 1961, Richard Nixon went on Jack Parr and played the piano. Right. This is not new. It's just...
So the point in putting them on with comedians is to humanize them in some way.
Sure. And it's also to have a conversation about things that ordinary Americans are interested in, which is a fight that we always have between people like me and people like you. You want to ask whoever the candidate is very specific questions about whatever the controversy of the moment is. And sometimes the handlers would like the president to talk about the fact that he grew up in Russell, Kansas, and his father went to work in overalls every day for 40 years. I mean, there's and people are interested in the latter as well as they are the former. You can't always get to the latter by going on 60 Minutes. Although it does come in handy sometimes.
Politicians are looking for opportunity to float their ideas. Clinton comes out and says, well, we ought to have uniforms for school children that would cut down on violence. It's done wonders for the post office.
There'll be bananas on Friday, ladies and gentlemen. 9 and 11 o'clock show.
Tell me, Bill, do you think that you somehow genuinely contribute to the national debate because you can say things that reporters can't say?
No.
Yes.
I'm not sure, actually.
For example?
I don't want to support what I just said. I just said
You can,
be a little cryptic here, Morley.
you can take the news and go a giant step further, is what I'm saying.
My goal is basically to change the society through my humor. And so far, I think I've done a pretty good job.
Come on, Bill, help me.
Why is Rush Limbaugh waiting in the men's room?
He's very often in the men's room. I don't know.
There's a whole other element to humor, though, which is humor is a very humanizing, particularly self-deprecating humor. And I think politicians try to be self-deprecating, and sometimes they are effective at it. Jack Kennedy. And sometimes they try and don't quite get there.
But self-deprecating is self-aggrandizing.
Well, but that's why it's so effective. I mean, for those of you from Washington, the Gridiron Dinner on Saturday, which is off the record, but Senator Chris Dodd went in there and gave the most self-deprecating, hilarious speech. All the jokes were about himself, which was such a marked contrast to Don Imus just being mean to everybody who was in the room. Chris Dodd was funny. In my view, most of what Don Imus said was not funny. Chris Dodd helped himself. Don Imus, if he ever wants to come back to Washington, probably didn't do himself any favors, although it probably helped himself with his own audience.
But that's a skill that not many people have, to be able to be self-deprecating. You're right, it's the best weapon you have. Kennedy had it. Very few people do. It takes some real comic timing and knowledge and instinct.
Right.
And what most candidates should do if they're not funny, and most of them are not, is not try to be funny, because that's just painful.
But the temptation is always there.
George Bush had a joke. Remember that? Make my 24-hour period. I've never heard anybody screw up a joke that bad. Just don't try to do it. And also, when I vote Republican, when I'm for a Republican, it's because they're not funny. I don't want a funny Republican. I want a mean old man who's going to watch my money. And there's nothing funny about that. Watch my money, don't be funny. That's my Republican. There you go, Roger. You're all set for another year, pal.
I could charge big for that.
Do all politicians lie?
Yes.
No.
No, do all politicians lie?
No.
Oh,
Does Bill Clinton lie?
Are you insane?
No, that's such a sad comment on...
It's a mere question.
No, but that so many people would say yes so quickly. I do not think all politicians lie. I don't think all journalists lie.
Oh.
No journalists.
I know,
But all
that
comics
comedians-
lie. There's no doubt about that.
Comics are the ones who don't lie. That's why they laugh at us. Laughter is an involuntary response. They laugh when they hear the truth they've been thinking in their head, but nobody said yet. That's what comics do.
We are truth tellers, Morley.
It's true.
Do they all lie?
Of course. You can't get elected
Let's
without
just
it.
say most of them lie.
Oh, bullshit. You
I
cannot
mean, you can
get
always tell when they're lying because their lips are moving.
or sweating.
Above the lips. So.
Yeah.
You cannot get elected without lying. Paul Tsongas, tried that. There's always a guy who tries that, and he gets...
He was elected to the United States Senate. I mean,
What's that?
He was a politician. He was elected to the United States Senate.
Did not get elected because of the way he spoke.
No, he said, I'm not Santa Claus, and he's not president
No,
either.
he said,
okay,
I'm
that's
not Santa Claus.
the lesson there.
Tony, do they all lie?
I think politicians lie as much as everybody else does.
No, come on. They lie a little more than
No,
most.
I mean, I don't think so.
You're lying.
I am. I think that most people do not make it through a lifetime without telling a lie from time to time.
Yeah, but that's not the question. Of course that's true.
So I think politicians don't lie anymore.
So what?
Than the average person does when they're talking to their boss or to their spouse or to their friend.
But this is different. They're asking for our trust.
So the question is, do they lie more or less than other people?
Yes.
I think there's a tendency for most people, from time to time, not to state the full truth. But, to pick out politicians as a class and say they do it more than other people.
Yeah, but we're talking about this class tonight, and do they lie? The answer, the consensus is
they lie
yes.
because the people are too big babies to accept the truth. So they have to lie to get elected. You can't tell them what we really have to do.
Well, the truth is often transitional in the politician's mind. In other words, I'm not going to run for another term, and then maybe I'll change my mind later. So
No, that's not a lie. That's a genuine changing of one's mind. It's the reason I ask the question is you have this extraordinary gap between the campaign and the fact. What he says in the campaign and what he says and does once elected. That, to my mind, much of that involves lying.
Yes.
Correct?
I mean, not always.
No,
Sometimes
I
you're
don't
not
think
able to accomplish what you set out to. I mean, when you say politicians, you're talking about a pretty broad class of people. We're not just talking about Bill Clinton and Bob Dole. I mean, there's a whole class of people out there who, I mean, some of these people are motivated by public service, and they go out and they tell the truth and they try to do what they were elected to do, but they don't always accomplish what they set out to do for a lot of different reasons.
Bob Dornan never lies.
Well, exactly.
that's why he's not president.
Precisely.
Exactly. There's a guy who never lies. The guys who get 1% in the poll are the ones who don't lie. The other ones have
also
to...
he's crazy.
Yes. But he's saying what he believed.
No, he's very, very, yes.
But what they want to do is they want to get the votes of people who really disagree with each other. That's what you have to do, so you have to lie. I mean, Bob Dole, his position on abortion, you know, for example, what is it, you know? I guess he's against it except in the cases of rape, incest, and the survival of the candidate. So it changes all the time because he doesn't want to offend whoever he's talking to. He wants to...
But the truth is that he has been consistent on the abortion issue, and he hasn't misrepresented.
Oh, God, that's not what I read.
He does tend to have trouble when he's asked about it, though.
But he has to vote.
Well, that's because he doesn't want to explain things well.
He's got a 25-year
He says
career
one
of
thing,
votes.
and then after the debate, then there's another explanation, what
No,
I really meant.
No, I think Dee Dee's right. What happens is that I think a lot of these politicians run for office with good intentions, but when they get there, they find it's not as easy as it looked from the outside. That they can't really accomplish what they wanted to because it is institutionally not as simple as it looks.
If that's true, and I doubt it, it suggests that these poor creatures are the most naive people in this country.
Do you think when George Bush said, "Read my lips, no new taxes," that he knew at that moment that as soon as he was elected president, he would raise taxes?
No, he liked the sound of it.
Right, and the opposite...
Correct?
No, I think he believed it when he said
He
it.
knew at the time that it would help win the election.
Yes.
That's what he knew.
Look.
And he knew that it was a macho way of saying Michael Dukakis will raise taxes when he's president, and I won't.
And more to the point,
But believe me,
the opposite instance is even more telling. The opposite instance is Walter Mondale telling the truth at the 1984 convention and saying, I'm going to raise your taxes.
And getting slaughtered.
Now there's the truth, and look what it
Getting
gets you.
slaughtered.
I mean, look at the Lincoln-Douglas debates, and as... Please.
They weren't, by the way, they were not funny.
No, they were not funny. But as Lincoln moved further...
Bob Dole loved them.
That's what I said earlier. He's old.
As Lincoln was moving...
He is old.
As Lincoln was moving further south in Illinois, he tailored his message regarding black people, and it got more and more southern in the language he was using to describe it as he was moving south. Now, he was a pretty honorable guy, but he found it necessary to at least tailor and shape his message even... So, I mean, if you're saying, do politicians like old people in old times sometimes have to shape things? Yes, but I think that the
No,
the
that
presumption...
was my question. My
Even
question
honest
was
Dave.
lie.
Yeah, I mean, but the presumption as a journalist that you look down on politicians today as a class that you're superior to, I think is unsupported by my experience either with politicians or journalists, actually.
That may have been what they taught you about Lincoln in Australia.
I've never been to Australia.
You sound like you have.
Dee, for example, Bill Clinton was adamant, unequivocal on the issue of gays in the military, correct? And it was just about the first issue he took on
You
as
have to
president.
raise this again?
No, I'm just
Okay, no, I'm
asking
sorry.
you an
Go ahead,
innocent
go ahead.
question, dear. He was absolutely unequivocal on this. And then suddenly he was very equivocal on it.
Well, I mean, I can give you my view of what happened, which was that the president wanted to lift the ban on gays in the military. The Republicans in Congress made it clear that they would attach legislation to a bill that the president wanted to sign, like family medical leave, legislating the ban into law. So the president had essentially two options. He could sign an executive order that would have been overturned by congressional action, or he could negotiate. And he chose to negotiate because he believed that would make a difference in the lives of men and women in uniform. It didn't work out as well as he would have liked, but his intentions were honorable.
But did he know going in that...
No, he didn't know that the signals coming back from the Hill would be that we're going to attach legislation to something you really want to sign in the first few weeks.
that there would be intense opposition to this.
I don't think... I don't know how much time he spent thinking about it. It wasn't in the top 50 things that he set out to do.
It's also unfair to say
It was
that
the top 50, the first thing he did.
No, but not by choice.
Him. He didn't start it.
It came out, it was asked about it by the New York Times. It appeared on page 1 of the New York Times, and it thrust it to the forefront of his agenda during the very closing days of the transition. That was not a strategic move on the president's part. The president wanted to start with the economy. He always wanted to start with the economy. Events transpired. People can think whatever they want about how that turned out. But he negotiated because he thought he could make it better.
Okay.
And it didn't work.
Who lies more, Republicans or Democrats?
What about the gays who think Lincoln is gay? Do you know about that? The log cabin Republicans. Are you associated with them? I find that to be an amazing thing.
Republicans lie more.
Didi?
I agree with Al.
Tony?
Democrats, actually.
There's no difference. It's a draw.
The entire Democratic Party's a lie.
Okay, explain yourself.
No.
Well, let's see. Roosevelt said, we're not going to be sending your boys off to any foreign wars.
Watch out, this is where Bob...
Oh, right, and after Pearl Harbor, he should have abided by that. That would have been smarter. To go, you know what, I don't want to go back on my word. The Martians have landed, but I'm not going to send your boys off.
Well, but we now know that he knew...
That is what gives your type a bad reputation.
We now know, of course, that he knew about the attack on Pearl Harbor before it came. But that's... I think it'd be good for 60 Minutes, perhaps, to look into that.
Yeah, that's a new story, Pearl Harbor. Cutting-edge stuff.
Has political correctness seriously damaged political satire, political humor in this
Well,
country?
I mean, I'm not sure there was that much damage, but sure, I think that since we're a nation of immigrants and ethnic humor is the base of much of our humor in the country, and almost all ethnic humor is now politically incorrect, it's certainly withdrawn a large catalog of jokes that politicians would normally use. And the only ethnic humor you can use now is on your own ethnicity, and even then I think you can probably get into trouble. So I think certainly political correctness has reduced it, but I think from a fairly low base.
Are you a Polak?
Yeah, what are you?
Now, you know, I think the only difference is now that we now have more comedy about political correctness.
Right.
I mean, I don't think there's really that big a difference.
And we're better off in, I mean, it has gone a little too far in some respects, but I think we're better off in many respects.
How are we better off?
Because I think people are more sensitive about the language that they use in ways that, I mean, you can go too far in some respects we have, but come on.
So we have to be careful about what we laugh at.
Yeah.
Isn't that a kind of stifling, almost, dare I say, crippling thing?
You mean challenge, don't you? Don't say cripple.
Yes.
None of these, neither Bill nor Al has made a racist joke in this panel, and I think they've been pretty funny. So I guess there's plenty of other stuff.
No, I don't think that has anything to do with racism.
Yeah, but
Well, no, but I mean,
political
to
correctness,
take Tony's
excuse me,
point.
I think I have some way to, title to say what political incorrectness is. It's not about ethnicity necessarily. To me, it's always just been about telling it truthfully, the reason I'm against political correctness is because it gives liberals a bad name. And liberals can't afford a bad name.
Everybody is trying to be politically correct. Pat Buchanan says there's no room in my campaign for racists or anti-Semites. Of course not. Those positions were filled months ago.
I'm going to write some of these down, Tony. I'm at Rascals tomorrow night, and I'm going to use some of these at the Comedy Cave in Cleveland.
But often when politicians try to be funny, they aren't, or they're offensive in some advertent or inadvertent way. And the next thing you know, they've given some mealy-mouthed apology for what they said the night before. Correct?
Correct. Al D'Amato.
Politically correct. Yeah.
Al D'Amato went on Imus and did a, you know, a kind of a bucktooth Coke bottle impression of Judge Ito, who does not speak in any way with a Japanese. I mean, he's an American. And
who it turns out, thanks to 60 Minutes, was a jerk. We found that out last night.
But Ito or D'Amato?
Yeah, Ito.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, so D'Amato goes on, or D'Amato is criticized, and he says, "I'm sorry if anyone was offended." And then he's criticized for not saying, "I'm sorry, I did this." And then, remember, he got like almost like a heart attack, and was brought into the hospital because of the stress. His friend says he was under a lot of stress. I thought that was pretty funny.
But when was it Dick?
So he's going to do his impression. I want to hear his impression of a Japanese guy having a heart attack.
That's nicely politically incorrect.
No, it isn't. Everybody? Didn't offend anybody, did I? No.
It offended everybody, apparently.
But was it Dick Armey who referred to Barney Frank as Barney Fag? Yes?
Yeah. A slip of the tongue, Morley.
And he said it was a slip of the tongue.
Often I say the word Frank, it comes out fag.
Sometimes I say Dick Fag. Or Dick Armey is a fag, or a big fag.
But that's after you've had a couple of drinks.
You know, or just Dick Armey's a big dick. Sometimes I say that. And it just comes out. It's just like, or like, you know, or I don't like Dick Armey. That comes out.
But are those things planned? Do they know they're going to get into hot water, but they make the point and then
specifically on that, he stumbles over his words a lot, and everybody who knows Dick Armey knows he stumbles over his words. Oh, why in the...
Let me get this.
Why in the world would he say...
One more big pile there. Let me get that for you.
You see, politicians don't lie.
And why would he use that phrase when anybody would know that it would get him in trouble? The fact is, he stumbled over his tongue.
Maybe he didn't know that.
Of course he knew, because he's actually a fairly smart fellow.
He drinks a little.
Hold on a minute, Tony.
I was with him at that dinner.
But he has a constituency out there who loved it, right?
No, I don't think so.
I could use it.
I mean, I think that's a caricature of conservatism, to think that there is constituency that likes hearing that sort of thing, and it's a conceit of some people to think that that's that way. So I happen to think that it was a slip of his tongue, you see, and that he didn't intend it, and he was feeling very bad about the fact that it came out that way.
Al, and and Bill.
Let's hope Tony doesn't have a heart attack.
From a professional point of view, from a working comedian point of view, who do you want to see as the next president?
Well, now Dick Armey, because I would love to hear more. I mean, you know, this is worse than O.J. saying the disguise was to go to Knott's Berry Farm. You know, it's on that same level. Pat Buchanan, you know, was our O.J. this year. You know, as long as he's in it, that's good fodder.
No, but once it's I think we can fairly say it's going to be Clinton or Dole, from a working point of view, not as a citizen, as a comedian.
Dole's better.
You want Dole?
Brain dead. I love him, but he's brain dead.
Dole. I mean, as a comedian, you want Dole, but as a comedian who's in the pocket of the Democrats, I want Clinton.
Okay, let me just pause for a moment. And we can take some questions from the audience for 10 or 15 minutes.
10 or 15.
I'm sorry. Who? What's the question? Is Ross Perot good fodder? Well, he's sort of done fodder, isn't he?
No.
No.
Well,
he's just getting warmed up, Ross Perot.
he's going to do it again, evidently.
Yeah.
Dana Carvey did the hilarious Ross Perot and saved our 1992 season at Saturday Night Live. So, God bless Ross Perot.
How about Hillary Clinton as fodder? Or Elizabeth Dole for that?
Hillary. Well, I really like Hillary. So, and this is it's probably a good example of why a comedian shouldn't get to know people in public life, because she is very different in person from the caricature of her, and part of the reason I really like her is that she laughs a lot. And most comedians like anyone who laughs at their jokes.
Yeah, Clinton.
Well, tell me, what are the jokes that she laughs at, though?
Oh, she loves whitewater jokes. Just loves them. Nothing. No one laughs harder than Hillary at a good Susan Thomas's joke.
He's right that when you meet them, very often one of the reasons they got to the top is because they are so good at meeting people. Clinton, when I met him at that dinner, yes, he won me over so fast. Not that I was against him, but you know, it reminded me of the time I met Don King. I swear to God, I met Don King for 10 seconds coming off an award show when he was coming on, and I always thought Don King, the lowest form of scum on the earth. Bill Maher, you're fantastic, young man. You're wonderful. You ought to get a medal for what you do. Bill, fantastic. I thought, Don King's a great guy. What a great, and that same thing with Clinton.
So you're as easily seduced as the press?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you guys are so easy.
Oh, I met Gingrich, and I didn't like him, but he didn't like me. We had a little discussion at the White House Correspondents' Dinner last year.
You didn't laugh at your joke?
No, we just started talking about. I said, I know you're not supposed to talk about politics at these things. So I said to him, but I couldn't help it. I was talking to the Speaker of the House. So I said, you know, I'm worried about that by sending everything back to the states are going to have to compete with each other and drive benefits down for the poor. And he said, what's wrong with that? And but the subtext of our conversation was, I don't like you. Yeah, I don't like you. And so I don't like everyone I meet, but I hope he comes to.
He thought you were Bob Frank.
I was very impressed when I met Clinton. I met him at President Nixon's funeral. I really liked him. And he tried to pick up my wife.
You know, you were doing so well.
Thank you, Mr.
Watch my money.
I have a question over here. Mr. Schaefer. Schaefer over here. Over here. My question would be to Al and to Bill. I guess the question is, isn't most comedy based in the truisms, whether somebody says something or physically does something or has a situation that they become involved in? Is that always the comedian's defense is, well, they said it and let the public make the decision? You touched on that a little bit earlier about the truth.
Well, that's what Bill was saying, that comedians are the truth tellers. I think I said that before myself.
Is that always the defense, though? That, hey, they said it, so therefore I can say whatever I want?
Well, why do you need a defense if you're a comedian?
Well, like well, that's a good point. But I missed at the dinner. I mean, it was like he made the truth that, you know, Clinton did say the line about, oh, baby, and then everybody took that as being offensive, and then it went, you know, that became a big issue.
He said it about, you know, a baseball player going to second. I mean, what kind of That's the truth.
Yeah, that's just not a great joke.
Yeah. It's just,
Right. So you would agree
But
that was inappropriate or
A
not?
good joke points up a truth that you can't get to in any other way but humor.
Let me put it another way. We're truth tellers.
Thank
I'd like to know what prompted each one of you to come into this panel tonight and sit here for this abuse for whatever reason you got here. What do they have on it?
I can answer that, I think, for everyone, almost everyone. Pure, undiluted hamness.
No, it was in my contract. And Tony can vouch for that, but I'm happy to do it. And it's been fun. But it's now time to go.
If meeting someone and... Oh, I guess we can't hear.
That's fun.
If meeting someone in public life and liking them makes your job more difficult, does meeting someone and disliking them as much as you thought you would make it easier?
Yes. There's quite a bit in my book about the speaker. And our meeting fortunately made it. I'm sorry?
Let's talk about family values.
Family values, and was this in relation to the speaker? Ladies and gentlemen, Jackie Gingrich.
Thank you. Al Franken, if you were traveling in Egypt and you were writing a postcard to Charlton Heston, what is it that you would say?
Divide this sea for me. No, that's not right.
Political. We'll hear from...
This is a question to the comedians, so I'll let you identify yourselves. Is there a conspiracy of silence regarding Lyndon LaRouche in this particular campaign, or will you give him his fair share?
Yeah, it's a conspiracy, man. I'd look into it.
Lyndon LaRouche once called Walter Mondale the most evil man of the 20th century.
Let me repeat them. Who is the funniest person in the House or the Senate? And the Senate.
Sonny Bono is very funny. I mean, he actually is.
Who would have thought?
Right, that a guy who shares big nose jokes for 5 years.
Who else is funny?
Dole is funny, I hear.
Sarbanes.
I hear Dole has the best.
Oh, man. No, get Sarbanes alone. God, it's funny.
Clark Clifford was very funny.
Clark Clifford?
Until the whole
And thank God he's behind
scandal.
bars, because what a menace to society if he was on the loose.
Not in jail.
What about foreign policy?
What about foreign policy?
Could you be more vague, please?
The question...
Personalities aside, are there any funny issues?
What is wrong with these people?
This is Washington.
Funny issues.
Yeah.
AIDS, always funny.
Yes. Rape, very funny.
Rape. Genocide. Always a crowd pleaser.
Ever since Vietnam and Watergate, it's harder to be a truth teller, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I was wondering if Chelsea Clinton is really off limits. I think that since her hair's grown in, she's looking a lot better these
Not in
days.
another couple of years, she won't be. She is becoming a very, very pretty young lady. She really is. To see that growth, it's really great. She's self-assured.
Pandering to the administration again.
What's that? No, she looks interesting.
For everyone on the panel, straight answer, if it's possible, what has been the biggest surprise so far in campaign 96?
Dee Dee?
The biggest surprise. I have to say, if anybody had asked a year ago how the Republican primary would turn out and where we would be at this point, everybody in this room would have picked Bob Dole. I don't think there's been a lot of surprise.
You know what's a surprise? Roger, I know, worked for Arnold Specter, and that's a surprise that he didn't do better. In my book, I had two scenarios for a Specter victory. One was a plane crash.
And the second one, he takes Anita Hill as his running mate.
Well, no, but it was a bus crash, but it played out. It was Dole. It was the whole everyone crashing on Gingrich.
What's it like, though, seriously, working for a candidate who you know does not have a chance?
Well, there are cause candidates who run to make a point. Eugene McCarthy against the war in Vietnam, Arlen Specter on the issue of choice, who run for some more noble purpose than just winning the office. And actually, those kind of campaigns are fun because you're not gambling the White House. You're just out there trying to make an ideological point.
You're playing with the house money.
Sort of.
Well, they're all playing with the house money, correct?
Who did better, McCarthy or Specter?
Well, neither one of them got to be president.
Yeah, that's true.
Press secretaries ever have to lie?
I'm going to give the same answer I gave before.
Let me change this question slightly. Do press secretaries ever lie?
It would be dishonest if I said in my entire life I never told a lie.
No, as press secretary.
I don't, did I ever? No. I think no one believes me, so it doesn't matter what I say. You trade on your credibility as a press secretary. It's the only thing you have.
You do what?
You trade on your credibility.
But sometimes don't you lie for the good of the country?
It's never in your interest or your boss's interest to lie. It's just
I mean, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, they lied to the people sometimes because it was in the best interest of the country.
Yeah, I guess there are instances. I didn't have one of those. You go out there and say things that are wrong, which is mortifying.
Well, Roger,
because you have bad information and you have to clean up
oh.
after yourself, and that's very uncomfortable.
You mean they tell you the lie so you don't think that you're lying?
That has been known to happen.
Right.
To some people sitting right here.
What was it that Ron Ziegler said? That
we're not bombing Cambodia.
Everything I said
yesterday was his point about Watergate is inoperative.
Everything I said.
And Larry Speakes got sent out to say, 10 hours before the invasion of Grenada, there are no plans to invade Grenada, as the U.S. forces were heading toward Grenada.
Right. Well, that's a case where we're protecting our soldiers.
But he didn't lie because he didn't know the truth.
Well, does a good press secretary not want to know the truth?
No.
Just like a good
it's
lawyer.
Not worth it.
Well, come on.
No, you don't want to. I mean, sometimes I suppose in issues of national security, you have to make that compromise, and there are so few cases where that is actually true, where you're going to compromise national security if you do not know the truth. That it's a very tiny universe, but it is one that exists. And I think, in order to protect national security, different people have different interpretations of what that is. And so what the administration thinks is in the nation's security interest is not necessarily what the press thinks. But those are very, very rare judgments. There's a whole much broader scope where the press secretary always wants to know the truth.
Is the press secretary lied to often by his master?
No, I think he's more likely to be staffers who are trying to spin you.
Exactly.
And you have to actually figure out which staffers to believe and have an antenna for when you're being spun. And we really play the job of a reporter inside our organization to try to find out what the facts are so we don't go out and
what the operative truth of the moment is.
Because staffers try to resolve or to further their own agendas, what they believe is the right thing to do, through sometimes the mouthpiece of the press secretary. It happens all the time.
One more question. This is a question from the celebrated Dick Tuck.
No, I was just asking, was the impeachment of Richard Nixon an issue of national security?
The case could be made.
Yeah.
Come on, you can do better than that, Dick.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Morley, I got your wire and I showed up. I should have. I'm very disappointed. I should have been a little suspicious when the ticket was Sununu frequent flyer miles. But anyway, I'm here, and I'm just, but I'm glad that you suggested it's all over. I recall in 1972, 60 Minutes did a show called "Can Anybody Here Stop Muskie?" And the answer was no. I don't live here, so I come from the Wild West, and I'm telling you it ain't over. If you think that for the next 5 months we're going to have, what's Muskie called this year? Well, we're going to have Dole and Clinton and nothing else. You're going to get a big pleasant surprise. There is going to be lots happening out there that is going to, as I say, shock Washington, but it won't shock the rest of the country.
Somebody finally did stop Muskie.
Oh, yes, quite a few people did.
Yeah.
When did it end the show?
Ain't funny.
No, it isn't. This primary, but it will get funny. That's the beauty of it. As I say, you guys will love what's going to happen.
There's an opening.
Just as you love Richard Nixon.
Right. Do we have to end on that one?
Let's do one more question.
Do one more, man.
I have a
Yes.
Sorry, hold on.
What about the Speaker's fascination with zoo animals?
What about Speaker Gingrich's fascination with zoo animals?
They remind him of reporters.
Ooh. And on that note.
Well, that's why I was so upset about not getting into the front of Air Force One, because they have a little zoo there. And they have a Komodo dragon.
She donated to the zoo, and then he couldn't get to see it. Yeah. It's very sad. Because they had peanuts up there, too.
I think we have to wrap at this point. Thank you very much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Our reception continues in the adjacent room, so please feel free to stick around and meet our panelists.
Morley, do a great job. Let's hear it for Morley.
Thank you, Bill.
I want to go up and see her.
Are you really?
Would you like to meet her?
I'll stay in with
Go ahead.
All right.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the National Press Club. I'm Sonia Hilgren. I'm president of the National Press Club. Dee Myers, one of our panelists this evening, said unequivocally in the Washington Post, quoted today, "There is no humor in Washington." Tonight, we may or may not prove her wrong. That is for you to judge. And I want to tell you how pleased we are to present this program in collaboration with Comedy Central. And I'm going to turn it over to Tony Fox of Comedy Central, who's going to introduce the rest of the show. And thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Sonia. I, too, would like to welcome you here this evening on behalf of Comedy Central. We are very excited about this panel. I would like to start by introducing our moderator, a veteran CBS newsman, Mr. Morley Safer, and co-editor of 60 Minutes. Okay. Next to him is the former White House press secretary for President Clinton and current co-host of the CNBC program Equal Time, Ms. Dee Myers. Next to Dee is humorist and author of the nonfiction bestseller Rush Limbaugh is a Big Fat Idiot and Other Observations, Mr. Al Franken. Next to Al is the press secretary for Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, Mr. Tony Blankley. Next to Tony is the star of the hit Comedy Central series Politically Incorrect and anchor of our Indecision 96 presidential campaign coverage, Mr. Bill Maher. And lastly is longtime GOP strategist and partner in the international strategic consulting firm of Davis, Manafort, Stone, Inc., Mr. Roger Stone. It's all yours, Morley.
Thank you. What Somerset Maugham said of the literary life can certainly be applied to politics this year. He said, make people laugh and they think you're a trivial fellow, but bore them in the right way and your reputation is assured. And I think we can properly describe Mr. Clinton and Mr. Dole as properly boring. Neither is certainly very funny, at least not on purpose. And I'd like to ask the panel, particularly Bill and Al, it looks like a pretty dry time ahead, does it not? Have we not heard every joke we can possibly hear about Clinton and Dole?
Al, I defer out of age.
Well, okay. First of all, you got a lot to work with Clinton and Dole. Let me just review. Dole's old. He's extremely old.
Why is that? Why is that funny? Why is that funny?
Oh, you can do all kinds of jokes.
You know how old he is now?
He's 72 years old.
When he won California, he declared it for Spain. Just saying that's old.
That is old.
I'm saying.
So you got the old, you got the temper. So
The
that'll
temper
happen.
of what?
Dole's temper.
Oh, I see.
Well, where have you?
But
you're
in
in
you
the
think,
editing room doing those tobacco.
and you think
pieces.
that
Yeah, but Dole doesn't have a
Bob-
temper anymore. He hasn't. It's gone.
He's kept it under wraps.
He's old. He's too old to have a temper.
That's true. I agree.
He had a distemper show.
And then with Clinton, you have your, you have the adultery thing, which wouldn't. No one in his right mind would raise that in front of him.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
Or God forbid with his
speaking
wife.
of which, Don Imus, who some people do find funny, I guess, does the Imus flap prove once and for all that people in this town have no sense of humor?
No, I think it proves that at the dinner that night when they were serving the Italian chicken, that really they had served a little bit of British beef, and the whole town came down with mad cow disease because everybody's wandering around frothing and falling on their bottoms.
No, but I think the thing that makes me think there is no sense of humor is that why on earth would you invite Don Imus if you want gentility?
But you know, the bottom line is Don Imus wasn't very funny. He was
I
mean.
disagree. He was funny.
I didn't think he was very funny. I thought he was. Some of his stuff was funny, but in aggregate, he wasn't that
You were
funny.
there?
Yeah.
Were you there? I was there. Who else was there?
I was there.
You were there. The interesting thing about it was, and this is just an observation of, I don't want to get into critiquing Imus because
Why
I'm gonna
not?
Be, well, I'm
Next
gonna
week
be,
he'll critique you. Right?
Yeah, because I'm doing the White House Correspondents' Dinner in a month, and
he
it's
stole
kind of a
all your-
lose-lose situation too.
Are you going to be as lewd and
Well, actually, I don't have a lot of
decorous
time to prepare, so I'm basically just going to do what he did.
See, they wanted Mark Russell. They wanted cheeky. They didn't want insulting. They got Don Rickles on
no,
acid.
but you don't get... Why would anyone invite Don Imus if they wanted Mark Russell?
What I was going to say about being there, first of all, if you were there, it was a lot worse than seeing on TV because, we're animals. We're all animals, and people were giving off like these chemicals. Of like, oh my God. But what was interesting about the Washington audience was that people were shocked, but they would do this. They go like, oh my, I can't believe he's doing it. That's funny. Gosh, what a horrible.
Would you have made it? Would you have made a joke about smoking marijuana, for example, in front of the president?
I think I did. But it wasn't about him. I said Marion Barry had a plan to get drugs off the street 1 gram at a time. And I think when you're caught in a hotel room on videotape, the gloves are off for that subject. But my experience when
He is the mayor of this city. And I will not sit here.
Boy, Al, you are liberal.
Let me... let me address to the three hired guns here. Are they uncomfortable being the butt of jokes, politicians, or do they really love it?
No, I think it makes most politicians a little uncomfortable. Some of it's good-natured humor. I mean, Clinton takes a lot of shots on everything from his weight and his, love of McDonald's to things that are much more touchy.
He wants the jokes about his weight. That makes him vulnerable.
Let me explain, Morley. He eats a lot.
But that makes him vulnerable. That's a great. I mean, whenever they make a joke about his weight, he's going, "Yes, thank you, that's good."
No,
it makes me vulnerable. Okay, I'm a randy kind of redneck, blubber, bubba guy.
What may work?
But let's make fun of the blubber and not the.
Well, that's definitely true. But what may work and what politicians are comfortable with are not necessarily the same thing. And I suspect Tony's had some experience with this as well. I mean, some things that make you appear like a regular guy still make a politician uncomfortable as well.
What is Gingrich not like?
He doesn't like
to be joked about.
He doesn't like jokes about Bill Clinton's infidelity. He
You must hate that.
Yeah, he stands.
I know. He refuses to discuss it for the rest of the
I know. The Vanity Fair article. Is that something he likes to joke about?
I won't discuss Clinton's infidelity again tonight.
Now, Newt doesn't like jokes about his first wife. That I know.
Well, I wouldn't.
Well, you do know that.
Yes, I've read that, and I also, when I did that dinner for Clinton, he was sitting next to Gingrich, and after this dinner, I said to Gingrich, "I'd like to have you on my show," and he went.
And it was just like, I don't know if it was nervous laughter or just they don't know how to be an audience in this town.
No, what do you make of it?
Well, I did this dinner last year, and I also got into deep shit because I said a bad word. I guess I'm right about that. What I always find interesting is that this country has such a hard time holding two things that are opposite but also true in their mind at the same time. For example, O.J. Simpson did kill his wife, and there was a racist cop. Both things are true. In the same way, Don Imus, this town does not have a sense of humor, and Don Imus was funny.
You're wrong about Washington. This is a town that wants to cut taxes and spend more money on education at the same time. We understand that concept.
No, but
perfectly.
the question could fairly be asked.
First of all, O.J. Simpson was acquitted, and this is the United States of America. So I am not going to sit here while a man who was cleared by our justice system is...
Especially while he's at large, right?
Absolutely.
I don't think this town has an absence of humor, but I think it has an excess of hypocrisy. Because the humor people were laughing at, they laugh at Imus every morning driving to work, and then when he is more visible, suddenly everybody is shocked to find out that he was saying what they've been laughing at for the last few years.
But is there a line?
Yes.
Forget whether...
And I didn't cross it. What pissed me off about this thing... You laugh, and I wish to Christ you would, but I'm telling you, there is a line. What bothered me is I was interviewed by all the papers after Don Imus's thing, as well as after my own, because they gave me some crap for this. But I would not, in front of the president, make a joke about his infidelity, with his wife sitting right there. I wouldn't do that to any couple at a dinner party. And I didn't. I mean, that is where I would draw the line. And so I hate when they called me up and lumped me in with that. I think, no, there is a distinction.
Well, would you hold on a minute. So you say sex is the line, or...
No.
Or